Let's look at the mix window. So let's go to the window menu and click on mix. Now here we have our channel strips. At the top of a channel strip we have the inserts, the first 5 inserts here, A to E. On the left you have the insert selector. So if I was to click on that, I can click onto a plugin. Now a plugin is a real-time effect. So the signal's coming off the hard drive into the channel through this EQ, and for example I could roll off the bass and then it will come out with less bass. Now beyond that and below that we have sends. Send selector again on the left, so if I was to click on this I can send the signal out to my interface, or I can send it to an internal bus. Now here's an internal bus fader. So what I would do usually here is I would send bus 1 and 2 to an auxiliary channel, and then the auxiliary channel I'd put a reverb plug-in on in the insert, and then when I lifted this fader up the signal would go to the reverb, and therefore I'd put reverb on my sound on this channel strip. We'll look at that when we get into mixing. Below that we have the input-output, which is the routing control. So how do I route, or what do I route into my channel? Here we've got 4 analog inputs and 2 digital inputs. I can also route into a fader any of these internal buses, which could be interesting for doing things like bouncing or subgrouping. And below that we have the output. So again, I've got my 6 analog outputs, 2 digital outputs, and again I can bus out from the output of the channel strip. The output of the channel strip would be after the fader, which would be below the fader. Okay? Now below this we have automation, which we'll get into right at the end of the course, different automation modes, and groups. Here's the pan knob, so it's the right speaker, left speaker. Below that we have the record button, the solo button. So what this does, it actually mutes all the other faders, if you see that, and the mute button, so you can mute just this fader. Below that you have the volume itself, the fader, and to the right you have a peak meter. Now if we look right at the bottom here, we have the nameplate, so here's the nameplate, and then just above that you have an icon which tells you what type of fader this is. This is an icon of a waveform, and therefore it's an audio fader. Up here you can see what kind of volume you have, and also if you look here it'll show you. Now I hit command because I'm on a Mac, and if you're on a PC it's control. We'll give you the actual peak reading of the audio on this fader. So I'm just going to go back to volume. On the left hand side we have tracks. We have this side column. So these are the tracks. I can select, if you see the nameplate at the bottom of the page, highlights. So this is how I can select. I can either select in the bottom of each channel strip or in the column on the left. Now I can also hide. See this little dot here shows and hides each track. So for example, here I have my drums. Beyond the drums here I have bass and I have some guitar. What if I wanted to hide all these? Well, there you go. Now I only have the drums in my mixer. The other tracks will play, I just can't see them. If I was to open them up again, they reappear. Okay? It's purely visual, and it's a way to help organize your session. Now below here we have the groups, which we'll show later. For example, if I have my drums here, I could go new group, and here I would call it drums. There we go. And okay, and now I can move all these faders as one unit, as all my drums. Here on the right, if I was to deselect it, then I can move my faders individually and then reselect it, and so on.